There you go. Now it's day 15. Yeah. Today's day 15. I'm doing my push-ups at my cousin's house today. Spreading awareness. And today I'm reading an article from the internet from worldbeyondwar.org. The title of the article is called "Why Do War Veterans Commit Suicide or Murder?" In two recent articles in the Los Angeles Times and the academic studies that inspired them, the authors investigate the question of which war veterans are most likely to commit suicide or violent crimes. Remarkably, the subject of war, their role in war, their thoughts about the supposed justifications or lack thereof of war never come up. The factors that take the blame are, apart from the invariably obvious prior suicidality, prior crime, weapons possession, and mental disorder treatment, the following breakthrough discoveries: maleness, poverty, and late age of enlistment, in other words, the very same factors that would be found in the less suicidal and less murderous population at large. That is, men are more violent than women, both among veterans and non-veterans. The poor are more violent, or at least more likely to get abused or busted for it, among veterans and non-veterans. And the same goes for unemployed or dissatisfied with career or other near equivalents of joining the age at a relatively old age. In other words, these reports tell us virtually nothing. Perhaps their goal isn't to tell us something factual so much as to shift the conversation away from why war causes murder and suicide to the question of what was wrong with these soldiers before they enlisted. The reason for studying the violence of veterans, after all, is that violence as well as PTSD are higher than among non-veterans, and the two, PTSD and violence, are linked. They are higher, or at least most studies over many years have said so. There are exceptions. For those who've been in combat than those who've been in the military without combat. They are even higher for those who've been in even more combat. They are higher for ground troops than for pilots. There are mixed reports on whether they are higher for drone pilots or traditional pilots. The fact that war participation, which itself consists of committing murder in a manner or sanctioned by authorities, increase criminal violence afterwards, in a setting where it is no longer sanctioned, ought, of course, to direct our attention to the problem of war, not the problem of which fraction of the returning warriors to offer some modicum of reorientation into non-violent life. But if you accept that war is necessary and that most of the funding for it must go into profitable weaponry, then you're going to want to both identify which troops to help and shift the blame to those troops. The same reporter of the above linked article also wrote one that documents what war participation does to suicide. The U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs says that out of 100,000 male veterans, 32.1 commit suicide in a year, compared to 28.7 female veterans. But out of 100,000 male non-veterans, 20.9 commit suicide, compared to only 5.2 female non-veterans. And for women ages 18 to 29, veterans kill themselves at nearly 12 times the rate of non-veterans. Here's how the article begins. New government research shows that female military veterans commit suicide at nearly 6 times the rate of other women. A startling finding that its experts say possess disturbing questions about the backgrounds and experiences of women who serve in the armed forces. Does it really? Is their background really a problem? It's not a totally crazy idea. It could be that men and women inclined toward violence are more likely to join the military, as well as more likely to engage in violence afterwards, and more likely to be armed when they do so. But these reports don't focus primarily on that question. They try to distinguish which of the men and women are the unacceptable back home violence-prone ones. Yet something causes the figure for male suicides to jump from 20.9 to 32.1. Whatever it is gets absolutely disregarded as differences between male and female military experiences are examined, specifically the increased frequency of female troops being raped. Suppose for a moment that what is at work in the leap in the male statistic has something to do with war. Sexism and sexual violence may indeed be an enormous factor for female and some male troops, and it may be far more widespread than the military says it or knows. But those women who do not suffer it probably have experiences much more like men's in the military. Then the two groups' experiences out of the military are alike, and the word for their shared experiences is war. Looking at the youngest age group among men 18 to 29 years old, the annual number of suicides per year is 100,000 people, were 83.3 for veterans and 17.6 for non-veterans. The number of women for women in that age group 39.6 and 3.4 women who've been in the military are in the age group 12 times more likely to kill themselves, while men are 5 times more likely. But that can also be looked at this way. Among non-veterans, men are 5 times as likely to kill themselves as women, while among veterans, men are only 2 times as likely to kill themselves as women when their experience is the same. When their experience is the same one. Organized approved violence, men's and women's rate of suicide are more similar. The same Alien Time reporter also has an article simply on the fact that veteran suicides are higher than non-veteran, but he manages to brush aside the idea that war has anything to do with this. People's natural instinct is to explain to military suicide by the war is hell theory of the world, said Michael Schumbaum, an epidemiologist and military suicide expert at the National Institute of Mental Health, who was not involved in the study. But it's more complicated. Judging by that article, it's not more complicated, it's entirely something else. The impact of war on mental state is never discussed. Instead, we get this sort of enlightening finding. Veterans who have been enlisted in the rank and file committed suicide at nearly twice the rate of former officers, keeping with patterns in the general population being white, unmarried, and male were also risk factors. Yes, among veterans, the rates are higher than in general population. Why? The answer is, I think, the same as the answer to the question of why the topic is so studiously avoided. The answer is summed up in a recent term: moral injury. You can't kill and face death and return unchanged to a world in which you are expected to refrain from all violence and relax. And returning to a world kept carefully oblivious to what you're going through and eager to blame your demographics characteristics must make it all the more difficult. So that was a kind of long article, but basically is there's more to what they're telling us about the suicide rate and the violence the veterans are going through after they return, and it says that something it could be linked to mental issues they had prior to going in, which is why they lean towards the military. But I mean, you know, you kind of have to stop and think: is this who we're training to be killers, and then coming back and then just releasing them into the general population? Like, no wonder we're having issues with readjustment, right? So here I'm gonna knock out my push-ups and wrap it up. It's my long video, but here they go.
Riley.
All right, that was my 22. Today's day 15. I'll see you guys tomorrow, day 16. Peace.